Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast.
You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
It's been a long time. It hasn't been since 1981, but it's been a long time since Jeffrey Wiesenfeld has been with us. He is a former trustee of CUNY. He worked with Pataki and with Senator Aldamato, Mayor Ed Koch, and he's on the board of many different Jewish groups like the Folksbina. But he's very actively speaks out on the issues of concern. And I know he went ballistic when he saw a Yiddish flyer endorsing Madamni for mayor of New York, right, Jeff?
Yeah, this is, sometimes I wonder when I see things like that, or when I see the Neturei Karta, or when I see the lefty Jews who endorse Mamdani, I say to myself, I try to, my mother would have said, oh, look for a schis in the person. So I say, oh, you know what? Maybe it's because of our 2,000-year persecution that there's some genetic damage in some of our people. That's the
There's a folly went into them, because here you have, and we don't know, it was in Yiddish, and there was also a Yiddish robocall, which I suspect might be linked to it, where they attacked Cuomo. Actually, listeners called me saying they're not voting for Cuomo. They like what they heard on the robocall. Either they're not voting at all, or they're voting for some of the other candidates, but not Cuomo. And I think that there's a lot of that sentiment. Unfortunately, we'll see what happens, how it all plays out, but it's a very tight race no matter what happens. I believe you're going to see the same cast of characters and then some come November.
That's absolutely true. But, the way you have to look at this, it reminds me, I was driving in the car, and there are these radio hosts, for example, on WABC, like Greg Kelly, and I knew his father very well. His father is a wonderful man and was the greatest police commissioner in the entire history of New York City. But I was listening to him say, oh, he's doing everything he can to destroy Cuomo. He has people on the air whose parents were affected by the COVID
nursing home and the COVID.
And I said, I don't understand these people. We know. Look, let's be very honest about it. I could give you all the reasons Cuomo shouldn't be mayor. I could give them all to you. We're damaging our great stock of housing, which New York has been famous for, because the rent stabilization rules are so ridiculous. The landlords can't afford to make improvements, the bail laws, all of this stuff. But right now, you have to look at this moment going forward. You have to look at who's going to run the city now. And you can do whatever you want in the November election. If Cuomo wins this primary, you don't like Cuomo, you can take Adams. You can do whatever you want. The problem is, right now, the greatest threat to the biggest Jewish community in the world outside of Israel, the city of New York, which has been the home to the Jewish people for so many centuries, and it endured. I don't know how well we could survive this, to be in a city where we know that we're administered by someone who not only wants to damage our homeland, without which we're nothing. People who say, oh, well, Israel doesn't affect me, it doesn't enter into my daily existence. And it's very sad when young people especially don't feel that. And they need to see movies like A Gentleman's Agreement with Gregory Peck. They would know that even in this great land of ours, with its wonderful constitution, that we Jews were just a step above blacks pre-civil rights. They don't remember that. They don't know that. So anyway, they exercise these beliefs where, it's not going to harm me. I can look at all the reasons I like this guy and forget that he's a vicious, virulent anti-Semite who would like to see the state of Israel collapse. I can't live under someone like that. They have to look forward. And not only that, it's bad for every citizen. The socialist activism and intent that he has with respect to making communist-style supermarkets and free buses and freezing rent and all. These buildings will start to burn as they did before Ed Koch came into office. It's ridiculous, but it's also frightening. And there is no option. Those few of us, who may be out there haven't voted, they better vote for him. They better vote for Cuomo. They have no choice.
Some people I'm just saying, it makes them the most logical sense to vote for him. even though people may have reservations, but there's some people, and I'm hearing this, and a lot of, from women especially, I've heard it from, where they cannot pull the lever for him. I'm just telling you, the leadership has all come out supporting him, all the Mostos, but they're rank and file. A lot of them don't feel comfortable. I'm just reporting the facts.
I can see his shortcomings as they do, but he also has a positive side, and
He's a strong leader.
He's very capable, and he was excellent with public works. Let me tell every time I don't have to curse at LaGuardia Airport. That right there's been the Kosciuszko Bridge is there. The Grand Central transfer is a wonderful thing. You know, I get into the city in 23 minutes from Great Neck. He has great capability when he puts his mind to it. He does. The others can't do this, and certainly not a 33-year-old who's never held a job at all and is an anti-Semite, and that means us harm.
He's going to get 30% of the Jewish vote. Wait, 20%, and if he had Brad Lander, 30 all together,
30% of our very mentally disturbed Jewish brethren, lefty wackos, 31% of them today and in the previous days will vote or have voted for Mamdani and or Lander, one or both of them. 31%. These people are sick people. I'm sorry, they're sick people. They believe they're like the guy who figures if all he has to do is outrun the alligator, he'll kill his friend. In the end, they're all going to get it. They're all going to get it if the worst happens, God forbid.
But the fact is that you can have a flyer in Yiddish and a signed by the campaign to somebody in the Yiddish community, and there's probably more than one individual. I tried tracking it down, and I was told that there are people who always do these kind of things that are au contraire. To me, it seems more organized. Somebody who's on the campaign of Mamdani that's putting it together. It said "Pay for Mamdani" on the flyer in Yiddish.
Look, I also have heard robocalls today that were handed to me pro Cuomo, and they were really quite entertaining because they were so honest. It said, "Ihr hat nicht Cambrera, stitz for Cuomo," and it went on and on why, and they tell you why and how bad Zoran Mamdani is and why you have to vote for Cuomo. And it was a very honest commercial. I was very impressed. And then, of course, I see these, which are in support of a Mamdani. I'm not going to make accusations and risk lawsuits on the line as to who specifically, but my unfortunate suspicion is that some faction of Satmar or some group is hedging their bets by having one or more of their people associated with Mamdani putting this. I don't know which group that is. I have no idea, but it's obviously arranged. It's paid for by the Mamdani campaign. It says so on the flyers. And it's disgusting. It's sick. It's sick. It's no less sick than a bunch of Hasidim from the Terei Kaka who go on the streets with the Kalesim from the Palestinians and say Judaism defies Zionism, etc., etc. They're no better. They're no better. And I would hope that nobody listens to these people. You know, a lot of times there's a Yiddish saying, you want to make yourself self-important. De machst dich wichtig. Maybe they make themselves, these crazy people make themselves feel more important, more relevant by believing that they're going to influence some people, or they want to make a name for themselves so people can say, oh, you know, I'm another spokesman. You don't have to listen to the leadership. Listen to me. It could be many factors, but whatever it is, it's disgusting.
Well, unfortunately, you see more notorious character after October 7th than you see previously. I've seen bigger numbers.
There are 2,000 of them worldwide. These people are as bad as a let's say a collaborator of the Germans when they marched in with the Einsatzgruppe, a collaborator of the Germans, whether it might have been in Poland or Ukraine or anywhere in Eastern Europe or Belarus, that gave up Jews for a bag of sugar. That's what they are. They're no better, and they're actually worse than those people who sold Jews for sugar. And why are they worse? Because those people felt that, you know, I don't have a choice. There's no food, there are rations, everything. These guys have total freedom. They have a choice. They were proven when the Israelis went into the compound of Yasser Arafat. They found the payroll records for Rabbi Hirsch and all of those.
They found a paycheck, yes.
And they're on the payroll of the government of Iran. They take trips there. What I never stood, by the way, is I used to ask sometimes one of the council generals of Israel, I say, can I ask you a question? These bastards, they go from Israel they go from Jerusalem or they go from elsewhere through London to Tehran. When they come back to Ben Gurion, why you let them in? Well, you know, they're Jews. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? What is this thing? Let them stay in Tehran. What's your business?
By the way, about 10 years or maybe a little bit longer, we converted Rabbi Moshe Ayer Friedman from Vienna. He brought the Neturei Karta to a Holocaust-denying conference in Tehran. And in his hometown of Austria, he had neo-Nazis and other anti-Semites come to his bar mitzvah. On the air, we converted him to denounce PLO, Hamas, Iran. We didn't, and actually got him into Israel. He was afraid to be arrested. We arranged he shouldn't be arrested. So we were able to convert one of them. But the irony is I wish I had it in front of me right now. There's an online you can find an Islamic cleric who's talking about the Neturei Karta. Oh, yes, we should use them because they're anti-Israel. But at the end of the day, they believe when the Messiah comes that, they're going to take over Israel. So we got to be against them, but use them for right now.
Yeah, look, use them for right now.
I'm just reporting what some Islamic cleric said about them.
One of my proudest moments, I showed up at a rally that I was involved with during the original Iran deal, and we had someone pay the nude Hispanic dancers in Times Square who would wear nothing. They had no clothes on, as you know, and their body was painted in certain locations to make it appear they were wearing something. They were called in Spanish desnudas. It was a scandal. They used to run around in Times Square and take money from people, take pictures with them. No problem. We paid them. We had them dance in front of the Neturei Karta.
And did it affect them at all?
Oh, down. And they tell the police, please take them away. Take them away. And the police said, listen, and they were smirking at me. And they said to the guys, well, this is a public street and they're walking by. They were really dancing by. But
they do a lot of damage because the Iranians have said, "You mean we hate all Jews? Look at this, our best friends are Hasidim. Look at them. I mean, people think they're Hasidim. They're not really."
There's only so much time we should spend on these people. They're sick. They're really lost.
Anyway, we have to organize people because after this election is finally tallied and counted, we still got to work between now and November. We got to really get Jews to register and participate and vote, and make sure every student, when they turn 18 years of age, get a registration form. Every yeshiva, day camp institution should be really involved with this. We have to be better organized, which we've not been during this election. I know there were fancy campaigns and fancy offices, but there was little coordination.
It will be a very heavy lift because presumably, if God forbid we get this this very terrible result. I hope not, but if we do, and we all have to back Mayor Adams, there'll be absolutely no choice. Look, I want to say something else because people shouldn't get the wrong impression. Curtis Sliwa is a person who's given his whole life to the city. I respect and like him as an individual and as someone who knows the city better than anyone. It's all true. It's all true. But we have to be realistic. The odds of a Republican becoming mayor of New York City are not the same as the odds of a Republican becoming governor of New York State. With red Long Island and red upstate, it's very possible for the larger position. For the New York City position, it's almost impossible. And if for it to be a possibility, you have to have a moderate Republican with a lot of money. You have to have a Bloomberg when he was still a Republican, a Giuliani in the early years, who was quite a liberal guy. He was very open to everything and he didn't discriminate against anybody. You need a moderate with money, and otherwise it doesn't work. The problem is I'm very frightened, frankly, for the city, in that if Madamni should, God forbid, win, that you're going to have a split in a moderate vote between Sliwa and Adams. I mean, people.
And Cuomo will be in the race too, and Jim Walden is in the race.
Yeah, but one has to make a rational. But we're talking about the two big players then.
Cuomo will still be, if he loses, he'll still be a player in the race. He has an independent line. And if he comes very close, he can say it was hot. The elderly didn't vote.
That I agree. But we're talking about the scenarios as it relates to winning or losing with more or less than 10 points. And then you know if the split is even or not. The problem is how will a coalescence occur around one moderate candidate of the three? Though even if he loses, obviously Madamni will have that leftist
working family party,
and he'll have that leftist cohort behind him.
Correct.
In unison. Whereas the moderate vote will be split 3 ways or 4 ways.
That's what I've been saying all along. The real battle is November. That's where the real battle takes place.
But we will have a great sense of it. I hope the Jewish people in New York, they will learn from the mobilization what the Democratic Party has come to. If that happens, they don't really have a home anymore. They don't. You know, it's very sad.
But as we close out, there's, of course, what you're saying is that Jews should become more Republican. But in New York, there's been a movement, and they've been somewhat successful in getting Jews registered as Republicans to switch back to Democrats so they can vote in the primary where the real action is. You've seen that happen in New York and may continue.
Yeah, look, I've seen that happen, but what can I tell you? If you believe in the Republican Party and you want to eliminate this problem, you're either going to advance the Republican Party in New York, or you're going to let it shrink further. Long term.
But the Republican Party does not support candidates, don't give them money, don't really get involved in helping them. So anybody who runs on the Republican line is pretty much running on their own. I've spoken to enough candidates who told me that. If the Republicans are serious about New York, they got to restructure and make it attractive to get good candidates and to finance and to help them.
That works pretty well outside of New York City. I mean,
I don't know why New York doesn't work. Nobody explains it to me.
You know, the only thing I can explain is say that there's still a bad taste from John Lindsay.
Anyway, Jeff Wiesenfeld, he's a wealth manager, but he also was with Governor Pataki and with Mayor Koch and with Senator Aldamato, and who's on the board of CUNY, and he's on the folks with a lot of different Jewish organizations. Thank you for speaking out. We got to shake the tree and wake people up. And if they're not woken up by now, we got to make sure they're up and not sleeping by November 5th.
Jewish voter participation rate has been very poor.
We got to change. Anyway, Jeffrey, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for tuning in to
Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.